I'm going to go through what exactly is advocacy, kind of the case studies of like how it's worked from like what I've seen in my experience and like across Canada, and how we can use advocacy on our on our campuses to specifically progress the SDGs, and then share some resources and tools to kind of implement this in our own institutions. So oh, okay, gosh, did you see that? Okay, well, it was a quiz question. I always started with something fun. So which country has a larger proportion of women represented in its national parliament? By the way, we're all women in this little session, so I'd just like to shout that out. And you've all seen the answer, and it is Rwanda. Were you expecting that? I got lots of no's. Yeah, I was actually really surprised on that one. Maybe that's like a stereotype that we need to break down a little bit. I don't know. Okay, so what is advocacy? So if you look at the textbook definition, it says that advocacy is an activity by an individual or a group that aims to influence the decisions of a political, economic, or social institution. So what I'm going to ask you guys, what is advocacy in your own definition? And because we're a small group, we can all share. We'll go with Vicky first. Sorry. You can just say a word if you all pass.
Oh, okay. I think it's honestly speaking from your heart. So just very like honesty.
Great, love it. Caitlin.
I think it's acting from your heart and doing things that are important to you, but being willing to speak your truth and shake things up if need be.
Love that. Shake it up. Is it Aisha? Is that how you pronounce your name? Is that correct? Okay, go ahead.
I think speaking up for something that you care about and want to see a change in.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And is it Mona? Please say if I've pronounced your name wrong.
Yes, Mona, and you can go for Moni. And yeah, I think to advocate is to speak on behalf. And first of all, I think we should to have this passion, something we believe in strongly. And as mentioned, I love this to influence, right, decisions, to make a change according to what we are advocate about, right?
Absolutely. And I think you pretty much hit on the head what I've actually put in the slide. I put to influence change. And that's what I've kind of seen in my work. You've all kind of represented that in many different ways. And that sometimes comes from something that's maybe affected you in your life and you want to change it because you know that that's going to make a difference to someone else. And I think that's a really big and powerful thing within sustainable development. And one of the reasons why I joined. So I would hold on to that in your work because it's always important to have that why. So what is the difference between activism and advocacy? We're going to share that now because there is a difference, and that's kind of a new way of how we can create change. Does anyone who would like to share?
I could try. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I never thought of this difference, but maybe activism is like something you join a group or you join something already there. Maybe advocacy, you can start an initiative, right? Maybe, and you can start a group. You can be as individual. You can start the change you want.
Yeah, no, I like that idea. Absolutely, that's cool. It's subjective.
Subjective.
Yeah, in a way. Anyone else like to share kind of what the difference is?
I think activism is when you act on something, when you care about something, you act on it, and advocacy is when you're trying to get more people to work towards your cause.
Interesting. So you both said about like the amount of people as well and the type of stakeholders. Interesting. Was there anyone else like to share quickly? Caitlin, looks like you're ready.
I will just say that I don't know. I always just use them interchangeably. I'm just like, yeah. So I have no idea.
May I just add or ask a question maybe, and
Yes.
then add something? From the words itself, themselves, advocacy and activism, as Aisha, I think, mentioned, like action, call for action.
Okay.
Advocate, like speak, talk, spread the word.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. No, I like that definition. Act and then like speak.
Thank you for Aisha. She inspired me.
Oh, I love that. Empowering one another. Vicky, did you want to share anything quickly before I go on?
Sure. I almost feel like you can't have one without the other. Something makes me think like, oh, if you're an activist, then you have to advocate in order to, you know, like act as an advocate or activist. And same with the other way around. Again, I've also used them interchangeably, so I haven't really thought about this, but yeah.
No, that's really interesting. Thank you so much, because I think I've been using them interchangeably as well, but I've realized in my work, especially in institutions, they don't really like the work of an activist as much as they like an advocate. So this is the definition that I got from my experience and also just kind of researching into it. A advocate works within the system to make the change. So you're working within your university, you want to see internal changes, whereas an activist would work from the outside of the system to create changes into that system. So it's somebody outside the body of the university that is progressing and trying to make change on an issue. So in my definition, I would say that you guys would be advocates if you're working within. Okay, so just an example of my work. So I'm currently working, I would say, as an advocate. I sit on a board for Colleges and Institutes Canada as their co-chair, and we're trying to help advise 150 colleges across the country to implement the SDGs. But my previous work was in activism. I used to go and preach on the streets about climate change, and I got people to interview me and talk to lots of media and got people to rally and stuff like that. And it was good, but the change was different. And so I was trying to raise awareness of the issue in general, whereas now I'm trying to make like internal implementation of different change or initiative specifically. So I wanted to show you this case study because I think fossil fuel, and fossil fuel Guelph is going to be my example, is a really good example for this, for advocacy. So their mission is to contribute to progressing the reduction of emissions and carbon budgets in a university specifically. So there's like fossil fuel UW, fossil fuel Guelph. And so if you don't already know, universities invest their funds in the biggest kind of funder to university, wait, other way around. They fund a lot of fossil fuel companies. So the big crucial thing that we need to do right now is to divest from fossil fuels, and universities hold a lot of that wealth. So there's been a big push for that. So how do they do it? How do they get their university to divest from fossil fuels and kind of raise more awareness about this issue? Well, they started a lot with public activism and raising awareness on social media, lots of different marches. They took place in, you know, like the international climate strikes that were happening, and just trying to raise more awareness about what actually was going on and that these investment activities from their university. But within that, they were really persistent with communication. So they not only were activists in the outside, but internally they communicated with administration and they told them exactly what they wanted them to do. So they sat on the board of governors, they persisted the administration and pushed forward their agenda in any single way they could. And that actually led in April 22nd, 2020, the university's board of governors voted on a motion to divest from fossil fuels. So it worked. And that's the youth voice pushing forward the agenda. It was hard, but you can see that it is doable. And I'm not speaking of a person that's fully educated with Guelph's case study, but this is what I've kind of found through the pipeline. So maybe you can reach out to them specifically. And another thing that I wanted to showcase was like student associations. So I'm assuming everybody here would have a student association, and they're really great advocates actually for different issues. So firstly, this is an example from the University of Waterloo, WUSA. So they start their work with like a voting system, so students can vote to get representatives on the board to represent different issues. And so you can push forward different agendas to maybe tackle climate change, SDG 13, different equality issues, or you're trying to implement a food bank on campus or whatnot. So you can get representatives to represent your area of interest. And then so student bodies collect all this feedback during their voting time. And they normally like look through all these challenges, and then they elect representatives. And then from all that feedback, they try to create recommendations to push forward. So within that, they look at the different issues that students want to progress, and they try to figure out who is the decision makers that can help us push forward this agenda. So who is someone that can help us to divest from fossil fuels? And then the student body then advocates. So there's many different ways universities can advocate. I don't work on this specifically in my role, but it's maybe worth looking at your university website, because they might be able to show you kind of what their process is, especially if you wanted to push forward an issue. So in the case of University of Waterloo, the Student Association meets with the faculty and administration at the University of Waterloo, as well as politicians and government, and puts forward those recommendations that the students had put forward and they had put together in their advocacy plan. And then they would hopefully those recommendations would become reality. So student association is pretty incredible actually, and I definitely want to expand my work with that as well. So worth looking into. So how to make advocacy effective? It's hard because sometimes there's not one way of doing this, and it depends on your university. But here's some ways that I have found really useful. I didn't say this previously, but I've been doing work with SDG 13 and the SDGs for 11 years now, doing activism work, and very recently moved to advocacy work kind of within the system of higher education. And this has kind of been the areas that I've seen are kind of the most important to push forward an agenda. The first one being, you have to seek an opportunity. So it's, sometimes this is in life, right? Like, you know, you want to push something forward, but there's the crack in the window, and you got to dive for it. The door is closing, you got to go for it. So you got to seek out the opportunities. For instance, there can be, the university might ask for contributions to their strategic plan. You could write a recommendation for them to put in a certain policy, or divest from fossil fuels, or put in like a reusable clothing store, tons of different things like that. So seek out an opportunity for that. Maybe as well, the government's been pushing them for something, or an external NGO has been pushing. Can you kind of work with them to push forward that message internally? So you're working with external bodies and internal bodies. And within that, you need to build really strong institutional partners. So this is with the SDG alliances, or if you just have an area of interest, you need to have an ally on campus. So for instance, in my experience, I was part of an organization called World Merit, and I was creating councils across Canada to advocate for the SDGs. And I didn't really connect this to the university that well until I started to create the Impact Alliance, and that was our whole message, was institutional partners. And we got 3 bodies, the Sustainability Office at the University of Waterloo, the Health and Wellness Centre, and And then we got different help from the equity and diversity division. So we had many different partners come together, and they could push forward that, these students want to do this, they want to come sit on your board, they want to tell you about this problem. So often institutional partners don't say that they need something in public. They won't post we need a youth member to share what they feel like. You kind of got to go there. You got to get into their email box or knock on their door and be like, hear me out about this. So create those strong partnerships and be friendly with it. It's good to have personal relationships, interpersonal relationships with people to build that collaboration. So within that, you need a strong message. So hone it down to one thing that you want them to do. A call to action. So this is the issue. This is what we want you to do. And make this clear and advocate it for it many, many, many times. Again, it's about being persistent. And within that, sometimes you need to negotiate. So maybe you've advocated for it a lot and you've sat on a board and voiced your opinion and you've been friendly and you've got some strong partners and, things are going well, but they're just not quite there. And I really think I'm finding this more and more working in higher education. You've got to negotiate. So I would aim high, and then if you get 75% of the deal that you wanted, that's going to be good enough. Okay, so how do you link this to the SDGs? You can integrate the SDGs in your campus strategic plan. So maybe the university hasn't considered areas of poverty, hunger, health effects, different things that the SDGs align with. And you can bring the SDGs forward and ask your university to implement them. And a way to do this is through their strategic plan. It's been done at the University of Waterloo a little bit through our sustainability office. There's been cities that do this. I believe UBC might have been doing this. So worth a look, also with that resource that Tyson showed us earlier about the higher education progress of the SDGs. So sit on an advisory board. They always are looking for youth members. They normally elect 1 to 3. So find that opportunity and sit on it and talk to them about the SDGs. Answer those surveys and go to those events, the consultation events, and have that clear message that you're pushing forward. And go to that student association and partner with them and speak about what you want, and maybe even elect yourself to sit on their board. Another great way is, if you don't want to go too internal in the strategic planning way, could be awareness activities, so just raising awareness about an issue on campus, and then hopefully student bodies or students will start to understand a bit more about that issue and be educated. And within that, the whole point of the alliances pretty much, and an average you could take, is approaching clubs and matching their already existent operations to the SDGs. There are so many clubs and services on campuses, it's crazy. Students know what they want. They are advocates. So why can't you match their work to the SDGs and create even more impact by showcasing what you're doing for sustainability? And this might, if you can prove what the campus is already doing, you can then even advocate for even more. And I've seen that at the University of Waterloo for sure. And then also ask to meet with your president or your student council. Our president at the University of Waterloo just hosted a town hall. Apparently 1,600 people came. There was a lot of questions because obviously COVID is going on right now, but it's a great time to teach them about the SDGs and about an issue. But I would say bring really specific research pieces and a call to action. Okay, so an important thing to realize, which I'm sure you're very educated and have done before, but in kind of the business angle, you need to showcase why your university would want to even use the SDGs. So you kind of have to sit in their shoes for a minute. And for them to take on your project or to understand you, you need to speak in their language. And their language might be that, oh, we're a university that wants to progress globally or nationally. We want to be well known. And then you can say, well, the SDG framework is a global framework that showcases the Sustainable Development Goals, and we will be, you know, globally responsible if we start to progress them. But do keep in mind that SDGs are not legally binding for institutions, so there is no legal right for them to progress the SDGs. This is more of an advocacy thing. The SDGs are also a holistic approach, so it allows the university to really understand all the issues and all the aspects of how the university environment operates and all the people within that system. So this approach shouldn't just go to one faculty, it should be the president in my eyes, because it integrates everything together. As I was saying before, it's their international and national responsibility to act socially, economically, and environmentally, and the SDGs showcase that. And it provides a really great area to plan for the future. Okay, so now we're going to go into kind of each sharing, and we're going to figure out what's been working, what's not been working, what have you guys been doing, what do you want to do? And I just put up here kind of tell us a story about something that was really successful that your university did, or your institution, sorry, did to progress an issue that students put forward. And then we'll share kind of about what didn't work. And then we'll figure out kind of how to bridge the gap between these and try to create better plans going forward. So who would like to share a success story? If you don't want to share a success story, feel free to share a question about what I just said as well. Yes,
your 2 questions.
Oh, okay. You can go first, Moni, and then we'll get Aisha after you.
Okay. So my first question is, please, how to talk to politicians? How to reach them? Let's say as a student or just advocate, how to reach these people through, I mean, can you do this as an individual, or you have to reach them through your university, or let's say workplace, or initiative, or co-creation session, whatever?
You can actually, it's a really good question you have, because I think that's really important. That's where policy comes in, and we can see a greater shift around an issue. So what you might not know, your MP's email address is public. So wherever you are right now, you should have an MP, and their email address should be on the website for your city or your region. And you can approach them directly. So email them, explain the issue. Again, it's that process of problem and then like solution. So, and then there's a call to action. So there needs to be really solid research for your idea. So if you're talking about plastics, just like outline exactly what that issue is, why it matters to them and to their area, the solution that can solve that, and like within that some recommendations moving forward, and then how maybe you would like to be a part of creating that change. So also introduce yourself. It's really great when you say you're a student, because they're really, really interested in students. I know that for sure, working with different student bodies. I hope that's a help.
Great, thank you, Beth.
And they also have town halls, so they have opportunities where you can go speak to them in person.
Good.
Last question from you?
Yes, second question, legally binding. Could you please explain more about this? Yes,
so the SDGs are a framework that was signed on by 193 countries around the world as part of the United Nations. They are not legally binding because that means that people do not have to implement them and by law. They don't have to, there's no enforcement. So the university can go back and say to you, you know, like, we don't have to do this. So why would we implement the SDGs? It's more of an advocacy piece, it's voluntary.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Great answers.
No worries. Aisha?
My question is about the strategic plan. I know my college's plan is talking about SDGs. I have done this exercise where I have matched their 4 or 5 points, their first principles with the SDGs, but do they have to use the words as well? Or can they just talk about it?
It's completely up to them. I think if they want to be known kind of globally or whatnot, or nationally, they need to specifically use the SDGs. And so the SDGs, again, are not legally binding, so they can break them up into kind of subject areas. I've seen, for instance, in cities, they've broken them up into economic, environmental, and social aspects, and they say how they're tackling that aspect. And then within that, they can showcase an SDG that they're touching on or inspired by. So I would say it's a framework and it's a starting point, but it's not like, and that's why it's so powerful. It's a starting point for conversation. So you can put that forward maybe with some suggestions with how they can implement it, but they don't have to use the SDGs specifically, obviously, but it does look good for them.
Thank you.
Another thing I want to add on to that, actually, the SDGs are sometimes a little bit like not very applicable to like local levels. And so it's really hard to kind of match them to a university. But something I would tell you specifically, the Government of Canada just opened up the SDG unit, and SDSN Canada works quite closely with them. They are creating their own indicator framework, so their own measurements of what they want to progress, and they have specific targets to meet, so you can bring those specific targets forward. Look at the SDG unit. I also have some resources here, guys. These are on your slide, you should have got them. Getting started with SDGs at universities, which was created by a partner, an SDSN partner in Australia Pacific area. We're actually hopefully creating a white paper ourselves, which you can be a part of if you want, about how to implement the SDGs on campuses in Canada. So that's really exciting. But for now, that's a really great resource. The Fossil Free group has a great resource too. And as well as that, there's a youth action guide for implementing the SDGs. And lastly, there's some of my information here if you wanted to email me, reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter as well.